Hello, my name is Jack Heritage, practical karate instructor from the Cotswolds.
And I am Pat Woodward, amateur enthusiast and practitioner of a number of different martial arts styles.
And welcome to the Armchair Combatives podcast. Hello again, guys. Exciting to be here once again. And for the first time, we're in the same room recording.
We're in the studio, live recording.
This is crazy. I can actually see Patrick's face. It's amazing.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I did have to get him to wear a mask, but it's all right. So actually, the conversation that we want to have today is going to be about the internet and how it affects martial arts and how it can benefit and how it can also massively hinder and aggravate every single person involved within our space.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's such an interesting one.
Literally the definition of a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. And I want to kick things off by bringing in our friend Pat. Now, Pat, as some of you will know if you listened to previous episodes, did Aikido. And as many of you might also know, Aikido gets a bit of a bad rep.
The most hated martial art on the internet.
So, I think we got to kick it off, Pat. Aikido and the internet, how did it go, man?
So, I want to definitely start this off by saying, like, the Aikido in general, I actually really enjoyed the practice of, especially once I kind of hit that milestone that I always enjoy hitting in a martial art, which is like, I get it now. I understand what this is about, I understand what this is for, I understand what this has been created to do. But the internet, honestly, has nearly ruined Aikido on several occasions. Because, like, you get so many differing opinions, you get so many people, and I will freely admit, a lot of Aikido is incredibly esoteric, a lot of the motions, a lot of the throws, a lot of the locks. They are minute windows of success, because it is literally the exact point on the arm for the lock. It's the exact motion of disrupting somebody's balance to take them over into the throw. What a lot of people, I would argue, immediately misconstrued from watching the videos of Aikido is, you know, the guy does this like minuscule motion and and the guy goes over and the guy does this big roll, and the roll, the ukemi, is as much to protect you receiving the technique as it is not necessarily to make the other guy look good, but it's basically, obviously, if you just take the fall. And I mean, we read since in Karate Jack, you would teach somebody how to do a breakfall before we do the throws.
Yeah, absolutely.
In all instances.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the whole point of the Aikido breakfall is it's not just to distribute force, it's also to get you back on the feet to either run away or to continue the fight or the altercation in whatever method it's happening. Because some of these throws, if you just let the throw happen to you, you're going to land right on the top of your fucking head. And that's not, that's how you lose students, that's how you lose lives. So the whole point of a lot of these throws and the whole point of the roll is, yes, it looks big and broad and grandiose. And I will admit, yes, on video, sometimes it looks a little bit staged. Sometimes it looks downright dumb. I will hold my hands up to that. But as I've said in so many previous episodes, Aikido is a kind of martial art you need to feel. Judo is a kind of martial art you need to feel. Jiu-jitsu is the kind of martial art you need to feel. Karate looks great. Karate looks great in the open air, for Christ's sakes, like with the katas and all of that. Karate is something that people look at and they immediately go, oh yeah, I get that, it's about striking.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Excuse me. But the problem with Aikido is, like I said, so much of the technique they've been spent arguing down to these minute windows of success that it can look really, really fake.
Yeah.
And obviously, nobody on the internet loves anything more than a good argument, and it's just, and I mean, honestly, I like, fuck it, challenge for the audience: find the most mundane video you possibly can on the internet and comment fake on it, and just see how many people lose their absolute minds at you.
Oh,
like seriously, find like a cat video and be like, fake, definitely AI. People will lose their minds. People will track you down, just scream in your face, how on earth could this be fake? It's a cat video. And honestly, like, that was the same feeling I would have sometimes with Aikido. Because while we weren't really doing any filming, it was like, I would see people doing these beautiful, like, irimi nages on that, and people would be like, fake, clearly went down, clearly a fall guy. And it's like, he clotheslined that dude and threw him to the floor. How is that fake? And it's this thing of, like, because a lot of Aikido is like one of these very honorific martial arts, you won't find Aikidoka on Facebook arguing with people in the comments.
No.
Because even if it's not an exact traditional Japanese practice, you will still get the kind of people that do Aikido don't want to fight, and that means everywhere.
Absolutely.
So, of course, the reason why Aikido doesn't really defend itself is because, I would argue 99% of the people I speak to who are Aikidoka, and you bring up the topic of like the internet, 99% of them just go like, that doesn't bother me, don't care, really couldn't give a monkeys. But at the same time, that also means that the people who are in these comment sections, these sad little people, and they just feel like they can go ahead and say whatever they want because nobody will bring them up on it.
Yeah.
I think it is arguably one of the easier martial arts to pick on.
I think for me, one of the reasons why I think it is that like you look at the people that kind of jump onto the internet to say all this shit, like you know, I'm gonna pick on this, I'm gonna pick on that, is especially with like the Aikido guys, and the way that people kind of attack it, they automatically take it out of the context of the artistic expression of Aikido, and then they go, well, that wouldn't work in MMA. Well, no, like okay, a few techniques of it might. But no, Aikido as it is practiced is not built for MMA. You're not built to be in the ring with a guy that's trying to cave your head in and get you in mount and then drop elbows onto you. It's not built for that at the end of the day, and it's not the way that it's taught in the modern day anyway. For like, you know, like I'm sure you have this with other clubs, I'm sure you've seen. They're more interested in the artistic expression of it opposed to the like application of it. That's some of the things that I've seen.
No, completely. And again, we always come back to it. I mean, to be fair, context, I was going to say we should be called the Context Combatants podcast.
we should, yeah.
But season 2, new name change. But this is the thing. Like you look in the context of like, you're completely right. That wouldn't work in the ring. That wouldn't work in the street. That would work in the street, given the right situation. I will freely sit here and say that my bias would be, obviously you can't just learn one thing if you want to be, you know, a completely well-rounded, protected person, self-practitioner, martial artist,
absolutely.
However you choose to think it. But Aikido is taught to the police in Japan. So
and I can understand why.
And you can understand why, because you have the work with the baton, you have the locking, you have the throwing, you have all of that. And it's the thing of, it is a control-based martial art. Where if you say like, karate is a striking-based martial art, Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling-based martial art. Aikido is a control-based martial art, I would say, if you wanted to really characterise it down. But it's one of those where, like, and I'm sure this is already sparking some people to be like, well, the police aren't infallible. But in the nicest way, Aikido as a martial art does not have the same chops as karate or judo. It is not an old martial art. As I've said repeatedly, Aikido is really only as old as the 20th century. It's really not that old as anything. If anything, it's a mixed martial art system in itself. Just obviously by a completely different ethos than let's get in the ring and make Dana White happen. Yeah. Dana, if you're listening to this, which you're not, please don't come for me. That wasn't directed directly at you. You have far too much money and time on your hands to be, you know, coming after me. But then you have the thing of like, if it's taught to the police, somebody in the police obviously thinks it works for what its intended purpose is.
I think, you know, when you look at all of these kind of art, especially Japanese arts, when you look at the way in which they're kind of like they split and they evolved, they usually come from like really holistic styles where they know how to grapple, they know how to strike, they know how to throw, and then you basically have one guy that's like really, really good at locking, or I'm really good at striking, and then basically you get, you know, a guy going to his students, he goes, hey, if you want to get really good at striking or you want to get really good at locking, you need to go to this guy. And then eventually, because everybody starts going to them for that, that's all they fucking teach. And then they end up, their art becomes this condensed version of what was originally the martial map, if you will. And then they've got their little thing where like, I'm really good at locking and throwing. And it, like Aikido is basically similar to that branch, right? It's, you know, Ushiba, right, had a very good background in other martial arts. He wasn't just an Aikido guy, right? He would have known how to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Ushiba was a soldier, and the reason why he formulated Aikido was because just before the turn of the 20th century, he was in the army and he went into Manchuria, which is kind of modern day, like it's near, I think it's like southern China, I think is roughly it. But it was essentially like he went into what was Manchuria, which basically meant he went through, like he saw all the guys training in the Shaolin temples. Yeah. He saw all the guys training kung fu in the streets. He saw, like, he would have encountered Wing Chun as he travelled up there.
Yeah,
and then he would have gone into Russia, or near to Russia, so he would have seen people practicing things like Sambo. And the whole point is he just happened to be travelling through this corridor of absolutely incredible martial arts. And by the time he finished his service in the army and came back to Japan, he was like, actually, all of these martial arts have taught me something. I should start writing this down.
Yeah.
It's one of those where, like, I feel like, in creativity and enlightenment come in different formats. If you want to buy into the whole thing of like Ishiba was dogging around in his garden and had a vision of a golden light from the ground and had the kind of lightning flash of Aikido, and the whole art formulated itself in his head. That's fine.
Sure.
I buy into it a little bit. The same thing happened. The same thing happened to Paul McCartney when he wrote Yesterday. Apparently he woke up and the whole song was in his head and he wrote down, and the time it takes you to listen to that song was the time it took him to write it down on the piano. Enlightenment comes to people in incredible ways. However, I think it's also one of those where the difficulty lies in the sense of, like, a lot of, you say, this offshoot style.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, obviously Yeshiva had like a dedicated unit of about 12 students who were like his disciples, essentially.
Sure, yeah.
And this broad, all-encompassing art kind of got picked off in the same method that you described, because Yeshiva was quoted for saying Aikido is 90% striking.
Yeah.
But when was the last time you saw an Aikido guy hit somebody? So this is the thing, like, it was one of those where, like, Hirasawa went off and he was like, I actually really like the broad idea of this kind of influence of chi and kind of how it works on people. So I'm going to really delve into that. I'm going to really work on my unbalancing and my throwing, and that's what he's renowned for. Chiba took it way too literally, and he was just like, no, Aikido is the thesis of a brutal and deadly martial art. Aikido Aikido can be used to break bones, and he did that to his students, which is why he's got this kind of weird little sect of diehard students and no one else. Because he would literally like, this is how the technique truly works. Bam, that's your, like, break someone's arm. Like, he's got this kind of crazy reputations. And so many of his other students did the same things of, like, I really want to focus on the locks. I really want to focus on the weapon work. I really want to focus on the throwing. I really want to focus on the ukemi. And weirdly, what's happened is you've got this kind of single martial art at the top, and then it's kind of been filtered down into specific elements. And it's only now just coming back into the whole inference of, like, being formulated back into things like Tamiki, which is the system the Japanese police are taught, and, so on and so forth.
So here's the thing that I thought was really cool. Basically, what you guys didn't see was Pat did this big circle with his hands, basically going, it's all coming back together. And funnily enough, I think that has a lot to do with the internet. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we can share our martial arts more freely now. It's our ability to show our style, the way in which we teach, the way in which other people do it, and you guys will see this all the time. Like, it doesn't matter if you go to a karate club in London or you go to a karate club in Cornwall, okay, I guarantee they will not teach exactly the same, even though it's supposed to be karate. And this is exactly it. The more we share, the more we're able to kind of go, oh, I really like the way that guy's doing that. Or, I'm not sure about that. And this is where it comes down to that thing where you start seeing people complain and people go, oh, you get die-hard followers, and that's where you kind of get this split with the internet. Is the positive side of it is, like, like Pat said, it's like that bringing together of, like, being able to kind of, like, look at the information that's available to us and go, hey, look at all these things that we can share, but it breeds this ground of, but this isn't the way that I do it. This isn't the way that my group has always done it, and I disagree with you. And I think it takes that context, and we keep coming back to it, but it is so important.
Yeah.
And if you don't have necessarily the context of all these different martial arts, or at least a base knowledge of some of this stuff, it's very easy to just go, well, that's wrong. That's not what I do. So that's wrong. And it's just not a good approach to have. Like, if you're looking at something, you don't understand it. Okay, take the time to look at it and go, okay, well, maybe I'll do my research and figure out, okay, why are they doing it like that? If you do that and you still come to the conclusion that, okay, they're doing this for stupid reasons, it doesn't make sense to me, I don't see the functionality and I don't see why they're doing it, great, but you don't have to jump onto Facebook and go, you are fucking useless, come to any MMA gym and I'll beat the living shit out of you. Right?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a real gold nugget in the conversation of kind of like how the internet affects things, because the whole problem with, like, martial arts on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube Shorts, and you basically have to kind of condense the system down into, like, 1 minute segments.
It's crazy.
Some people are really good at it.
Yeah.
And some people really aren't. And the problem is, like, it's one of those things that it's really easy to say, like, oh, kids these days, but, like, realistically, I'm just as bad for it. People twice my age are just as bad for it now. The whole problem with this kind of fast-paced, fast food style of media and entertainment coming out is like, if you haven't grasped something inside of a minute, so many people will just be like, well, I can't get it, so it's not for me, it's not correct, I don't like it, etc., etc. And it is like so easy for people to just see something and go, yeah, I'm not sure I don't know that, and they don't have the inbuilt response of, that's really interesting, I never thought of it that way, I don't really agree with that, maybe I should look into this guy or his style or whatever he's doing and see how it affects that. On the flip side of that immediate response of like, if you can create a nice, well edited video that at least pretends to explain the technique, you have people's attention, you have followers, you glean more clout, and that is when the B word comes into play. So this is kind of something that me and Jack were discussing this episode, and we think we want to do a full episode on kind of the really damaging effects of good old fashioned bullshido, as it's come to be known, as it's come to be known on the internet. But this is the thing, like, if you can create a really nice, really well edited, punchy video, you could do basically completely useless martial arts, and your average Joe Sixpack will look at that and go, oh, that's really cool. This is, I mean, it's one of those things I remember seeing Michael J. White talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those where, like, certain things look great on camera and certain things don't. I think it was a Jesse Enkamp video.
Yes.
Still waiting on that sponsorship, Jesse. I'm joking. But it's one of those where we'll get him one day. So it's one of those things where he talks about turning a roundhouse kick and then turning the knee at the last minute to then turn it into a front kick.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where, like, sparring wise, that's great because the person naturally moves to defend the roundhouse, leaving themselves open for the front. It's something that, like, is a really solid, really easy to grasp sparring technique. But on camera, it looks really sloppy. It looks like you've just done a really lazy front kick. And it's really difficult unless you explain it. It's really or you kind of know what you're looking for. Which even then, I've seen, like, even, you know, the most seasoned among us, it would look difficult. And again, it comes back to my point about, like, it's something you have to feel. But it's one of those where, like, if you have the skills to create a good video of something, then realistically you can get away with peddling whatever you want. You can start claiming yourself to be, you know, absolute messiah of martial art. And it's one of those where, like, if you can just put it into a nice 1 minute format that people go, that looks really cool, you won't get a lot of people questioning it until somebody actually takes the time to watch the whole thing in detail and go, actually, that technique is really not very sound. I really don't think that's very safe. I really don't think that's actually got a lot of good thesis behind it. And that is when immediately the scale flips, and all of a sudden everyone's piling onto you.
It's interesting you say about, like, the attention span side of things, because I sometimes find it with students as well, like, especially, like, younger students, you know, teenagers. They don't seem to have. I think I'm blaming it on social media, to be very clear. They don't seem to have that same patience that we had when I was younger. Obviously, like, I grew up, phones were coming out, like, as in, like, the type of phones we have now were coming out when I was kind of, like, 12, 13, and they were becoming popular as I would already kind of grown up without them. And I don't know whether it's because some of the kids these days have been grown up with them since they've always known. But the attention span does seem to be something that is problematic in terms of that. You try and teach something, and if they don't get it straight away, they're just like, oh, I can't fucking do it then, and they just give up straight away. And I've noticed it with multiple people, and it's one of those things where it worries me if that's going to be a change and a shift in society as a whole, because it will affect martial arts, because martial arts are generally, you know, you speak to a lot of people, they'll tell you it's a lifetime pursuit.
It's something that you have to really dedicate,
and you have to work hard on. And it's one of those things, like, don't get me wrong, that there'll still be kids that will be massively dedicated, that will just, like, smash it, and they're like, yeah, absolutely fantastic, yeah, I don't mind putting in the hard work. But it seems to be more and more common that people have just got that short attention span. They'll smash it for a month, and then as soon as they get that bit of resistance where they're like, I can't do it anymore, they just go, fuck it then.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, we had a student come to the school quite recently who was a really talented kid, really talented beginner, and his biggest issue was you would show him the technique, he would do it once, and it wouldn't be, like, flawless. And I don't, like, it's one of those where, like, you know, you show him the side kick and he'd slam it in, and it was just like, yeah, that's really good, man, just make sure that you hit with the shin and not the knee or whatever it would be, and straight away he would be like, oh, I can't fucking do it then. And it was like, and like there was this immediate response of like, if I haven't done it right the first time,
I suck at this.
I suck.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so much of what we were having to do with this guy, having to do might be a bit pejorative, like obviously, you know, he really was a really nice, talented beginner. It was really nice to have him on, but something that we had to keep working was just like, dude, Jack's been doing this 17 years. You haven't been doing this for 17 minutes.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you need to rein in your expectations of like for the first sidekick you ever threw on a bag.
It's a pretty damn good one.
That was a pretty damn good sidekick. Imagine what you could do with a month of sidekicks.
Exactly.
The problem is people like don't see that mountain.
No.
It's that thing of I should be shown it, I should be able to do it. That should be the end of the chain. And what I would and I know it's very, like I said at the start, it's very easy to be like kids these days, but I would argue like it's affecting
adults.
It's affecting adults as well. It's not just the kids. I will freely stand behind, because I do genuinely believe that it is damaging to have these kind of little dopamine receivers in our hands, because again, bringing it back to the internet conversation, it's that thing of you watch a TikTok, you get your little dopamine, you get your little dopamine, you're like, wow, that did a really cool kick. Even if it's a great, even if it's like somebody who's reputable, even if it's not, you see a video of like a really well choreographed fight scene or a guy just slamming the bag or some really good sparring techniques, you get that little thing of like, wow, that's really cool. I could do that. I could learn how to do that. And what they don't understand is like, Bushido guy or not, the amount of time it takes to get to that level where it does look so flawless, even if it's just on camera, it's not instant. It's not the length of a TikTok. No. It's not the length of a short video.
And, but the problem is, though, is that obviously you've got people that are running businesses via social media. There's plenty of people that like put out, here's my striking program, here's my flexibility program. Do you want to kick like me? This is what you need to do. And once again, it's giving that kind of mentality of you can do it with little hacks. You can do it with my little program that's going to get you there instantly. And we see it the same in the fitness industry too. The amount of online PTs at the moment is massive. Like, I know we've mentioned it in previous episodes, but it's worth mentioning again. I'm a PT outside of this. I only do in person because I just don't like the idea of spending my life making reels for other people. It just doesn't suit me. It doesn't suit me. I like in person. I like to be able to talk to people. I like to be able to socialise with my job. I don't want to be sat behind a screen having to like make a video in the gym and then like edit it for an hour and a half to upload it just in case I get one more person to buy into my products. It just doesn't interest me. But one of the things I'll say is that you get all these like little shortcuts, and the problem is that because social media is built that way, it promotes its creators to make content that does that, and it's becoming this like kind of cycle of like do it in 2 weeks. This is my 6-week program to get fit, or my 6-week program to do this, or learn how to do this in a short amount of time. But it's like it's poor quality overall. And you actually look at the people that do that, they might stick to it for 6 weeks, but I guarantee they'll give up as soon as their 6 weeks are over.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been seeing this thing. I've been seeing this thing roll around recently, where it's just like it's one of those where it's so clearly horrendously an AI generated video, but it's one of those where like. It's like, if you sign on to the Mad Muscles program, how quickly will I see results? And the guy's like, 3 days. And I'm like, bullshit. I'm like, okay, settle the debate for me, Jack. Yeah. As a PT, if I started training right now, right, as of recording, it's approximately midday. If I started training right now and I trained exclusively for the next 72 hours, no sleep, no eat, no nothing. Would I have a six pack?
You will not have a six pack.
Well, I will not have a six. Would I see? I think the only results I would see would be that my bank account was fucking skinnier and I wasn't. Like, that's the only thing I think I would see in the next 72 hours.
If I'm looking at this realistically, let's just say you worked out for the next 72 hours, I would probably see fatigue.
Yep.
I would see I would see a lethargic Patrick. I would see a guy that looks beaten and downtrodden and looks like he wants to, I don't know, end it all. It's one of those things where all of these kind of like massively pushed like programs and stuff like that. And like I said, it's seeped into martial arts too, which I can understand why. As a creator that is just trying to make money, I totally understand it. And I'm not putting down people that make this content. At the end of the day, you make the content, and generally you come from a background of understanding, and your content is accurate to what you're trying to get people to do. However, like I said though, it's still that short-term fix, and you're having to use advertising methods that are getting people to think that they can do it instantly. And I think that is the problem. And I'm actually funny, so I'll freely tell you guys, I have been trying to work on my flexibility recently. I've been trying to stretch a couple of times per week, obviously on top of everything else I do. That's what I can really fit in. And I have noticed an improvement in my flexibility, and especially for my ability to do side kicks and roundhouse kicks. My abductors have been able to kind of hold me at that position a lot more comfortably. However, that has been honestly probably like a 15-16 week slog, and it hasn't been easy. I've wanted to give up a few times because I just can't be arsed. I'll be totally honest. But it's one of those things, I know that if I stopped doing that now, my legs would go back to exactly how they were before, and I wouldn't have any of the progress that I've made, because it has to be a consistent thing that I'm doing, and it's a long-term commitment to it. It's not a short-term commitment for a long-term gain. It's a long-term commitment for a long-term gain. It has to be something that you're doing on a consistent basis, and that goes the same with martial arts too, right? You can't train once every fortnight and expect to, be able to fight Tyson Fury at the end of the year. You have to be consistently training, and I would say at minimum you want to be doing once a week, and that is the bare minimum in my opinion.
I will freely admit that because of my scheduling, I can only really get away to train once a week.
Exactly.
I like obviously we have a good relationship, but it's like if I say Jack, you never guess, I got a Friday night free. It's going to be, let's go to the pub. It's not going to be, let's get in the dojo.
Exactly.
It's going to be one of those where I think, depending on obviously your lifestyle, obviously I do not have a 9-to-5 job. For me, once a week is about what I can get to within the scheduling of coming and training at Jack's club. Realistically, if I found myself with a different night off, I could probably go to a different club if I wanted to. But once a week I will also freely admit, once a week for 2 hours is the bare minimum of this isn't making me fit. This is just keeping me at my current level of fitness.
It's maintenance. Isn't it?
This is just maintenance. At the end of the day, I'm still learning. I'm still progressing. But in terms of my fitness exclusively, this is just keeping me where I am. And if there's one of those where if and when I get the chance to go and keep and work out more, that'll be when I start to see results. It's very damaging, whether it be your general fitness or your martial arts skill or any form of skill or monetary gain. I would argue to promise results in such a short period of time is so damaging.
Yeah.
And and I would argue the reason why it's so damaging is because the internet is now gearing itself to give you this short form and this short term hit of success.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of that's the biggest issue I'm kind of experiencing with the internet for martial arts as a whole, is the promise of you can master a martial art in 6 weeks. You can completely learn a fighting style in 6 weeks. There's creators that I see that they make apps, and it's like they've got lessons. They've got whole lessons planned out on apps, on websites, and that kind of thing. And yes, the content they're putting out is good, it's solid, but it's one of those where this isn't something that you can learn out of a book.
No,
I would argue.
Absolutely not.
I know that there are books written about, things, and you do see that's a really interesting technique, or that was really well organized. But I would argue that so much of the actual physical dynamics of stuff, you need to train with a partner, with an instructor, with a group of people, so that you can understand, so that you can see how it works, so that you have that kind of positive feedback of, this step isn't quite where it needs to be, the stand needs to be wider or shorter or whatever it needs to be. It's not something you will learn to any great degree simply by being online.
No, this is exactly it. I can understand, as a martial artist, you can look at content online for stuff that's more attribute training based. For me personally, like I said, flexibility programs and stuff, they are useful for a martial artist, because at the end of the day, the majority of our training in person is going to be, right, okay, we're going to do drills, we're going to do some sparring, we might do some specific look at technique, okay, where's people, what are people struggling with, etc. in my opinion, my job isn't to come in and go, right, guys, we're going to do 30 minutes of stretching. At the beginning of the session, we're going to do a 30-minute warm-up to make sure everybody's ready to go. Like, we need to prioritise the important stuff while we're there. Like, it is important to do a warm-up. It's important to make sure that you guys aren't coming in cold. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not there to do attribute training with you. I'm there to teach you the martial art. And if I'm spending all my time on little things like that, you know, in my opinion, we're wasting our time, which is not a problem. Okay, fair enough. If you're performing at a high level and you're doing, like, you know, you're in the Olympics, okay, it is important that you go and train with somebody that is stretching you and doing all that stuff. But I guarantee that's not the majority of your training. The majority of your training is in-person drills, it's sparring, it's making sure that you've got the live experience to be able to do that stuff. So I can see the value in people making that kind of content and selling it on the internet and going, you know what, well, this is going to help you with your martial art. But like Pat said, like, you need to be able to commit to going in person to learn this stuff. You know, you can't learn a martial art offline. Like, for me and Pat, you know, I can only talk for us, but I know for a fact when I go on to look at content online, whether we're watching, you know, somebody like Sensei Seth or something, one of his videos where he goes and does judo for like 6 weeks or something like that and then tries to get his purple belt, whatever it is, or we watch any of the videos where it's somebody explaining a fighting style or a method, or they're, you know, somebody's going to train with somebody. You know, there's loads of good guys on the internet that do this. I don't go into that video with no experience of any martial art, looking at it and going, I could learn that. I look at it and go, oh, okay, I could tweak the things that I already know and already do because I have a base understanding of this stuff. So, you know, if you go onto the internet and you see somebody like, you know, I'm going to teach you karate through my 12 episode YouTube series, it does make me a bit worried, because it kind of makes me go, well, are you actually learning karate, or are you just learning how to replicate movement?
Yeah.
Somewhere where you're not getting corrected.
No, I completely agree, and like I have definitely picked up techniques, whether it be kind of locks or the Kali scream or anything like that. Because I see these videos and it's people like explaining, when it's people actually like sat there explaining a technique, I look at that and go like, I could replicate that, but it's not a case of, oh, I've seen this video, I know this technique. It's a case of, actually, if I get a partner and I spend some time, I can actually replicate this sequence and test it out. And sometimes you get like, oh yeah, that's actually really cool. That's a really nice way. That's a good little throw or a good little striking pattern. I really like that. And sometimes you try it and it's like, oh, that actually really didn't work. That's annoying. I thought that looked like it worked. You obviously get like the small 10% where I look at that and I'm like, that's not correct. I don't think that's that's nothing. But it's kind of, this is the kind of thing where, like, again, I'm not a seasoned martial artist. I've been doing it a good long time, but nowhere near comparative to definitely a lot of the people I meet on a regular basis in the martial arts community. Still very much a beginner in that respect. But it's one of those where, like, even this kind of recircles back to my prior point of, even I struggle to look at every single one of these videos and immediately just sift through them like real, fake, fake. And it's one of those where the only way you really find out which ones work and which ones don't is if you actually get together with your training partners or your teachers or your dojo or your whatever you train in, and you go, guys, I saw this technique, I saw this I saw this pattern, I saw this, let's give it a go. And you work through it together, and then you make a conformed decision of, did that work? I think so. Did that work? Absolutely not. It's one of those where it is a great system of transmission, but you have to be willing to put in the time, the research. You have to have people around you to say, that's not right, or that could be better, or wow, even like the best case scenario, you show somebody the technique and it works first time and they go, wow, that's really cool, I never thought of it like that. That's the best case scenario. But I think we can both agree that is very much in the minority of the time. You have to take the time to work through. So I suppose moving away from like a bit of vitriol, we've had our little rant of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So obviously you do use social media and a lot of internet-based media to promote the club and promote your businesses. Sure. What would you say are like some of the positives and the negatives of being so like out there with your art?
You know what, the positives, like the big one for me, and when you say advertise, like generally my advertising these days, and I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, maybe I haven't, maybe it was a conversation I just had with you, Pat, I don't know, is very passive, and I let people come to the club. I don't go out there seeking students, I usually just go, we're here. If you want to come and train with us, you can come and train with us. So the only times that I'll ever put like an ad campaign out really is like, funny enough, this time of the year, August going into September. Obviously you get some new starters from schools, but also it's kind of like it marks a beginning, and people quite like starting things at the beginning. Is a weird like mindset thing. It's usually September and January people start new things. So you know, I don't mind it for that, and you do get a bit of response and stuff, but generally I find the response that I get is still very much so some random guy that's seen the advert. And funny enough, I've had about 3 or 4 people recently message, and they're all very blunt as well, which I don't like. They'll just message, and instead of going, hey, nice to meet you, Jack, my name's Dave and I'd like to do karate, this is exactly what I get is, hi, what style, Bob? And I'm like, right.
Nice to meet you too, Bob.
And so there's me, and I'm obviously very diplomatic, and I'm like, hi Bob, how are you? And I'll be like, so technically, so one of the things I'll always say is like, technically we are a Wado base, you know, Wadaroo base, but we don't really follow that, you know, and I try and explain it in about 2 paragraphs to make sure they have a really good understanding of what we do and how we train, you know, the approach that we have. Do I get a response? Do I fuck? And I guarantee, and I'm not trying to be horrible, but I'm going to call you fuckers out. Shot a can, people. You're the worst for this. Okay, is that you're, you know, it's like, well, it's not shot a can. Okay, I'm not. It's not the base style. It's not Funakoshi style, so I don't. And this, you know, so we end up kind of like that rift again between different styles and stuff like that. But it does seem like there is a lot of complaints as well that you get. Like, obviously it's good to be able to spread what I do, and it's great to be able to show people what I do, but for the most part, like, it is positive feedback that I get, but that's usually from like the posts that I make about the club. It's not my advertisement for the club. So it'd be stuff like, hey look, here's my group of kid students that have just passed their grading, or look, we're over in Germany doing a seminar, or look, we're here doing this. And you know, people look at that and, oh cool, you know, oh, Jack's put up another reel of him sparring with Jamie, and it's like, people like that kind of stuff because it's just good. It's good kind of like passive advertisement, because it's stuff that I would like to share anyway. It's not something that I'm going out and going, oh, look at what we do, oh yeah, come to our club. It's not like that. For me, it's like, share it so my students can see it, the parents can see it, and then other people, if they're interested, they'll be like, oh cool, these guys do this. So I can see the positives from that. But like I said, there is a massive negative side that comes with that as well, is it leaves you basically wide open for criticism. And I've had a really good one recently that I actually shared in a chat that we have with some of the practical karate guys, the instructors. And I put up an advert. Funnily enough, like I said, this time of the year I put out adverts for like the club, just in case anybody kind of like gets wind of it and they go, oh okay, cool, we'll try that. Especially for adults, that's what I'm pushing at the moment, because it is harder to get adults into martial arts. That's a separate conversation though. And I put this post up, and I picked a few different photos, and I did it on Facebook because that's generally where we get the majority of our people. And in a few of the photos, we were wearing like our little like compression t-shirts underneath our gis, and like, we know, different photos for different things. Like there was one of Stuart teaching, there was one of me with a little selfie with the guys, there was one of like a grading thing, and I think there's one of sparring or something. I can't remember. I put a few different ones up, and I had a guy comment on it, going, this isn't real karate because you're wearing a t-shirt under your gi. And I was like, right. So I was like, I literally
just an absolutely 10 out of 10 unhinged opinion.
Like unhinged opinion. And so I commented back, and I was like, define real.
Yeah.
And then he was like,
I can promise you, I am a real person.
I'm a real person. And then I said, define real, and he goes, not a part of traditional training attire, therefore not real. And it, like, obviously there's no fucking grammar as well. Like, if you ever look at these guys, they can never fucking spell, and they can never punctuate correctly. And I'm not trying to be horrible, but that is because you can just see they're just like spitting all their shit out their brain, and they're like, and then fucking this, and then anyway. And he went off on one, and I was like, so obviously I'm, as much as I like to just let things go, I did not.
Let's poke the bear.
I was just like, at the end of the day, I know I'm in the right here, so I'm going to go, you know what, let's just see how far we can go with this. And we carried on. And I said to him,
Join now for the live stream of Jack rage baiting an old man.
Absolutely. Oh, and I like how you knew he was old as well. It's just a good guess, because it is true. And I basically said to him, I was like, well, you know, I don't think the fact of me wearing a t-shirt really affects the quality of my karate personally. Right. And then he was just like, but it's important to like, stick to tradition because tradition is what holds this art together. And so going off on this massive tangent. Anyway, I dropped this like 3-paragraph banger, and I was like, and here's why, and fuck you why. But in a really, obviously I'm not just dropping like, and you're a motherfucker, and then your mum, and then no, it wasn't like that. It was very much so like, here's the facts, here's how I run things, and here's why I run things. Funnily enough, I haven't heard back from him. And also had some other people jump on, basically going like, dude, why are you just complaining about a t-shirt? And it was just interesting to see because the point I'm trying to make is that it opens the floor for these kind of comments. And the problem is that sometimes you'll get a comment like that on a post, and then you'll end up with people that kind of agree with it because they have the same line of thinking, because it might be like a traditionalist view, like, you don't do it the way that we do it, therefore this is bad. And then you get one guy comment something, and then you'll see loads of people go, yeah, I agree with this guy, that's exactly your movement. And then it ends up with this massive chain of stuff of just people complaining in my comment section over a post that's about a kid doing a roundhouse kick or something like that. And you're thinking, are they not thinking about this poor kid? This kid is literally just like, they're literally on like yellow belt, and they're complaining about the way they're doing. It's like, my God, like, just let him be.
Little Timmy.
Little Timmy's just catching strays. Yeah, he's always catching strays. Our Timmy, like, it's just, and it's like, it's just one of those things you think, like, have you got nothing better to do with your day than complain? And I just don't understand it. And it's always very targeted as well. It's always like, I'm going to go for the instructor. You are a shit instructor because you do this. And I'm like, okay, so I try and explain why we do it that way.
Yeah.
Do they listen? No. They come back with all sorts of stuff. Anyway, I find it really hard to ignore it because it's one of those things where you do, when it's your club and they're attacking your people. These are your students, your friends. You don't want to let them just get away with that in a sense, but you want to educate them as well. You want to make sure that they're leaving with some knowledge about why you do things the way you do. One of the things for me, I was like, we were talking about the t-shirt under the gi. It's just an example. I literally said to him, I was like, well, it's a compression t-shirt. We do it because generally I find when I wear that underneath my gi, when I grapple, I don't get as many rashes and like fabric burns and stuff. I generally feel like it negates it a little bit, and I feel more comfortable wearing that. Personal thing for me, not everybody has to do that. I certainly don't enforce t-shirts under the gi. I certainly don't tell people they have to do that, but I also wouldn't tell people they can't do that. But his whole thing,
it's also yes, it's not exactly traditional karate attire, but they didn't have fucking nylon in 14th century Japan.
Yeah.
So it's kind of course it's not traditional, yeah. And like you say, the reason isn't just, oh, I was a bit chilly that day.
Yeah.
The reason is, no, it's a specific grappling piece of apparatus. It's a piece of protective gear, like a pad,
yeah,
like a piece of headgear, or anything like a gum shield. The whole point is that it actually protects me. Because if you wake up having just spent however much money to go to this retreat in Germany, and you're covered in rashes and like mat burn, you're not going to want to do the next day of training, and you're actually going to ruin the experience. So like, really, what does it matter if you're wearing a compression t-shirt under your gi?
Yeah, exactly. And this is the point that I was trying to make to him, and he just wasn't having it. But it's one of those things though, because you can guarantee, like, he's the kind of guy, like, if I was to go, like, I'm trying to do it to like for safety, traditionalist as well, that I can guarantee the next thing that he would say is like, oh, well, our generation was just made of tougher stuff and just dealt with it. It's like, why should I have to deal with getting like fucking 3rd degree burns on my back every time that I do grappling because somebody keeps rubbing my gi against me? Like if it's just something that's for like protective reasons, like, why are you complaining about it? Like, this is actually benefiting the art, because it's meaning that I can train more effectively now because my body's safer. I'm not getting all these stupid little like grazes and stuff because I'm not sweating on top of somebody else. But anyway, it's one of those things where it's difficult to deal with because you have to address it in a sense, because as the person that's running this page and the person that's like, trying to show what I do and illustrate the practical karate that I do, I can't let comments like that, I can't just go, okay. I have to explain, I have to kind of educate, because at the end of the day, I feel like I've got a responsibility to go, well, this is why we do it this way. But equally though, like, for the most part, I won't really comment on other people's stuff unless I feel like what they are pushing is potentially dangerous or damaging. The one for me, and this is the kind of like comments that I will actually get myself into, is when it is regarding self-protection and self-defense. And if I'm seeing something that is being pushed as self-defense, and this is the way that you should do it, and this is really good, and this is going to keep you safe, and I see people in the comments going, "Oh my god, amazing technique, yeah," and like, because you can clearly see they don't have the understanding of it. They're just some random bystander that's watching this video going, "Oh right, okay, this must be right because this guy on the internet said it's right." I sometimes do worry, and I will be like, politely critical and be like, I would recommend maybe looking at this or maybe doing this because you're missing a little part of it. But, I try not to jump on the bandwagon of like, I'm just going to keyboard type and, keyboard warrior away.
I had a very good metaphor the other day of, it was somebody talking about, it was kind of a grander thing about kind of like success and how kind of human perception works. But it was essentially, it was looking at like a great sport. I think it was a documentary about like Michael Phelps or something.
Yeah.
But it was essentially like, people don't understand, and it was kind of the metaphor of like, you get these great athletes who are like Olympic level, Michael Phelps, Lewis Hamilton, these kinds of, Mike Tyson, these kinds of athletes, and it's one of those where the problem is, and the reason why, again, it's a public perception thing, but that's obviously been exacerbated by the internet, is your average person will look at Mike Tyson and know he's an incredible boxer, but they won't know why, just from looking at him.
Sure.
And it's one of those where if Mike Tyson gets in the ring and he wins the fight, the very simple thought is, oh, he's the better boxer because he won. But it was like, then you take it back to the Anthony Joshua fight where he lost. And it was, obviously, a lot of stuff came out, and it was a really difficult one to watch because, obviously, Joshua had this massive meteoric rise to power. He was very invested in his community. Everybody around him said he was a really nice guy, and then he lost this fight. And then all of a sudden, public perception is, like, switched up. And when he's trying to come out being like, I was overworked, I was dealing with health problems, this was happening, that was happening, nobody wanted to know. And the difficult thing is, you don't know if that's true or not. I personally want to believe it's true because I think the guy's had nothing but a solid career. He's shown himself to be nothing but a decent person. But there's always that thing of, is this just PR? Is this just somebody trying to claw their way back from a pretty bad loss? And I imagine it's a very similar thing you get with the club of, it must be a very fine line of like, I want to defend my students. I want to defend the style that I do. I want to defend all the effort I've put into formulating this club. But at the same time, do I want to spend my entire day in my comment section?
No.
Do I want to spend my entire day arguing with people whose minds clearly cannot be changed?
This is it. Yeah. It is difficult, and like, and this is the thing that I will say as well. It's like, I'm very open to criticism. Like, if there's something that I'm doing that people are like, mate, that's not. Provided you've given a genuine reason, you've been polite about it, and you've displayed it in a way which is hard to argue with, but also is clearly trying to be supportive and not trying to be just like spiteful and nasty, which is like majority of what you find on the internet. It's like, I'm more than happy for that, and I have had people like that in the past that have like put a little comment saying, hey, nice work, mate, but maybe work on that. And like stuff like that, I'm like, you know what? Because you were polite about it, I'm actually like, I'll actually consider your comment and I'll think about, that little thing. But some people, it's just the way that they say things and the way that they put it out. It's just that they're just like, you're wrong. And it is very much that mentality. And I think it's because they can hide behind their screens. Then they're more inclined to want to poke the bear, like you say. It's like, they don't care about the repercussions because there generally isn't many. But then again, like, there seems to be change coming with that as well in like the British government and stuff. Like, when you look at some of the things, like, people actually are being prosecuted now for things that they're saying online. So it's one of those things where maybe that is a step in the right direction to help people understand that no, you can't get away with just saying fucking anything.
There is a quote by Oscar Wilde, and I'm probably paraphrasing slightly, but he basically said something to the effect of, "Man is never more false than when you see his true face. Give him a mask, and he will show you who." And it's very much, people can get on Facebook or any other form of social media and hide behind a username or a fake profile, and they can just say absolutely deranged thing with the thought process of like, this is not going to come back on me. Even this guy you was just speaking about, who may not, he may not have been using a fake profile or anything like that, but it's one of those things where, like, in his mind, this person is on the other side of the world, or he might as well be. I can say whatever I want, and he's just going to have to drink it up.
Yeah.
I don't, and it's the thing of like, I don't have to be polite. I don't have to be kind. I can just give this unfiltered, unhinged opinion, and he just has to accept that.
Yeah.
Or the slightly more damaging thesis of, or he's going to argue with me, and then I'm going to... And you coming in with your 3-paragraph put down ruined his day, guaranteed. Because he sat there going like, well, actually, for the audience at home, Jack just had a lovely little grin on his face when I said that. But this is...
I do not want to ruin anybody's day. Just for the record,
except this one guy.
I just hope that he read that and was mildly angry and maybe put his fist through a desk or something like that. But aside from that...
to be fair, if he can put his fist through a desk, like, you're lucky.
Let's just hope he doesn't fucking look close.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
Just Jack. Sorry. The Rock has just turned up to the club.
Yeah. But he's Dwayne the whole time.
He's Dwayne the whole time. But again, this kind of comes back. This kind of comes back to of just like you see, and it's not just martial arts. You see it everywhere. No. People want to argue over the smallest things.
Yeah.
And the whole point of like having a comment section is like, so many people view it not as a forum to discuss the topic of the video or the post or whatever's going on. They view it as like, this is just a space for me to express my opinion and for everybody else to just stop that.
Yeah.
And that's obviously where you get a lot of the discourse. Yeah. Bringing it back to the martial arts, we get a lot of the discourse of like, oh, what style do you do? Oh, I do Wado-ryu. Oh, well, I'm Shotokan, so this guy. Exactly. See, I'm watching a video of this Aikido throw. That doesn't look real to me. That's not real.
Yeah.
There's no kind of like, there's no inference of like, and I get it, time's short, time's difficult to come by. These days, we spoke about that in prior episodes, but it's kind of, if you look at a technique and you go like, that jiu-jitsu did that so flawlessly, I don't think, I'm going to go to a jiu-jitsu club and I'm going to show them this video and I'm going to see if it, even if it's just 5 minutes of their time, just like, hey, I saw this technique, does this work? I'm not sure how really, and they're like, oh, that's the so-and-so.
Yeah.
And like the right guy will be like, yeah, I've seen that works. Or he'll be like, I can show it if you want. I can demonstrate it for you if you want. Go along to a judo class. Go along to an aikido class.
Absolutely.
Just for an hour. Just for the experience. Because I guarantee, even if you walk away going, even worst case scenario, even if you walk away going like, that was awful. Really didn't like that. I hated that. I don't like that style. I don't like the thing. I didn't like the teacher. I didn't like this. You will have bettered yourself as a martial artist for doing that. You can apply that to anything. You can apply that to any form of creative skill, I would argue.
So, right, this brings us on to the nicer part of the episode now, because we're slowly moving in the direction anyway, okay? We need to be looking at the things that unify us within martial arts more than the things that differ us and separate us. And I've got to call out somebody specifically on this for the good job that they do, and that is Ruckus from Martial Arts Journey on YouTube. Now, when you look at like his background and what he's done, and the way that he's brought together the USDC, the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship, the way in which he constructs that and brings in people from different experiences, and yes, he pits them together, pits them against each other to kind of do these challenges and stuff, but once again, it's a friendly environment, and the way in which he's constructed that I really, really like. And I think one of the things that I think is being done very, very well at the moment is the YouTube space for martial arts. I think, Instagram and TikTok, I'm a bit like, not sure. Facebook, it's just a fucking absolute Wild West.
It's a wasteland.
It's a wasteland on there. Okay, but YouTube, and especially like when you look at the big creators for the martial arts space. So, I'll just throw out a few names, like people like Kevin Lee, Jesse Enkamp, Sensei Seth, Ruckus, all of those guys. They do a fantastic job at unifying the martial arts and experiencing different things, and none of them are afraid to give something a go and see, okay, maybe I have a preconception about this, but let me see what it's actually like. And they're also very respectful when they do the video. Even if they're literally looking at it and they're like, I'm not sure. Because I'm not too funny. You watch some of Seth's videos, you can see like sometimes when he goes and trains with some of these guys, he's thinking, I'm not sure about this. But once again, he's there and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna soak it up. I'm gonna do everything I can to try and understand what they're trying to teach. And I guarantee every single video he comes away and he's learned something from that experience.
So much of the battle is just going and doing it.
It's just going and doing it, exactly. And I think they're the kind of guys we need to be watching for in the modern day, moving forward with martial arts, and it's the internet's influence over it. Is those guys should be the pioneers that you're looking at, because they're the guys that are actually being respectful and making sure that we're unifying the martial arts in a way which is first of all, functional. So we're looking at the things that work and the things that don't, which is important. You know, it's important that we kind of like filter the martial arts to a place where they're useful for the general people that are actually practicing them, whether that's for a sparring reason, whether that's for a self-protection reason, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, we want to be teaching the best quality martial arts we can. You know, we don't want to just keep stuff that's shit just for the sake of it's traditional, therefore we should continue to do it. But equally, though, we should still respect those things even if they're not as, you know, they're not as useful for whatever reason it might be, you know. And I've like I said, you know, those guys are people that I think we should watch out for. And I think, you know, when I was lucky enough to go and see Ruckus for like a little bit of I did a short part of his retreat that he did for the USDC in Lithuania. One of the things that I thought was, you know, the most interesting to me was he brought together so many different people for that experience. And everybody come from different backgrounds. Some of them were military, some of them, like a guy was Krav Maga, you know, one of the guys was a Kudo guy. And everybody got on so well. And there was such an atmosphere between the people there. And it was one of those things, I was sitting down, I was like, you know, there's like probably about like six to 10 different YouTube personalities or social media personalities there that are like big in their field, and every single one of them's like getting on fantastically, even though they've got these different experiences and different opinions. But like I said, they're being unified by the love of the martial arts. They're not looking at each other and going, well, you do this badly, I do this better. It was just, let's share knowledge, and I really like that approach.
I think that's it, and I think that is the goal.
Absolutely.
We're kind of just kind of capping off the internet episode. The most positive thing that the internet has done because I don't want it to sit here and just be a bitch fest of the internet is the death of martial arts, because there's so much used in the internet is a tool just like anything else. Used in the right way, the internet has brought together a lot of good people, a lot of good styles, and it is a good platform for sharing and learning and grow a community of martial artists, not just karatekas or jiu-jitsu guys or anything like that, or, you know, any other style. It's about growing as a community of people who enjoy what they do, and having, like, knowing that there are these events out there where these people do come together off screen and are still these nice personalities and they still get along and they still care about what they're doing is a real nice thing to hear. And I think the takeaway for anybody listening is, like, if you're ever unsure about how to act on martial arts videos that you see, or, you know, looking at clubs, the very short version is take the time, do 5 minutes of research, because that's all it is, really. Do 5 minutes of research. If you're still not convinced, try going along. Try it out. Grow as a martial artist. You're not going to be any less of a karateka because you've been on a judo mat. You're not going to be any less of an aikidoka because you've tried jiu-jitsu. Like, that's not... This whole idea of separate walls and separate fences between all the martial arts, I think, needs to go.
Yeah.
And I think the internet is going to be a good proponent in doing that, if we all just learn to be a bit nicer to each other.
I think it might take a little bit of time.
It might take a little bit of time.
It's moving in the right direction.
But I will say, it's really moving in the right direction. Well, that has been a lovely conversation, Jack.
Absolutely.
I think you have got a little piece of news regarding the final episode of season 1.
My goodness. So what we're going to try and do, guys, is for every end of the season, we're going to make sure that we get a special guest on our podcast. Now, our guest for next time's episode, so that'll be the 10th episode, the final of the season, we're going to be getting on Mr. Jamie Clubb, who's going to be talking all things about cross-training, about his method and the way in which he teaches, how he separates self-protection and some of his more kind of sparring-based practices, and it's going to be a really interesting episode to listen to. So it's a little bit more of a feature-length one, where we're going to be going for more like closer to an hour and a half. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. That'll be with you guys in a couple of weeks. Obviously the release is 7 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, if you guys didn't know that already. So if you want to make sure you're tuned in for that, please click link and make sure you're ready to watch it.
Well, moving forward for next week, Jack, as always, whereabouts can we find you if we want to get in touch?
You can find me on Instagram at Cotswold Karate School. I'm sure you'll find me quite easily. I'm also on our website, which is www.cotswoldkarateschool.com. Or alternatively, you can obviously message the podcast directly. We are also on Instagram at the Armchair Combatives.
Very nice. If you want to get in contact with me, you can find me at Good Medicine Martial Artist on Instagram. As Jack said, please feel free to get engaged with the podcast on pretty much all forms. podcast media, Apple Podcast and Spotify, as well as the official Instagram. And we'll see you all next time for the final episode.
See you then.